That has stamped the country with the years of instability and poverty it continues to suffer. Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into Sierra Leone's democracy, zooming in on the PR system and the democratic space for dissenting views. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangure, and this is AYV on Sunday. Right, it's a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday here on Channel 33, on TV, on Radio FM 101.7, and on all our different social media platforms, especially the AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page, where you have the opportunity to be part of the conversation tonight. Drop your comments, drop your questions. We will find time to go through some of them. Tonight, like always, we bring a star-studded panel of people who are always in touch with the issues we discuss here. I have with me Ibrahim Tomi, lawyer who is the Executive Director for Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law. Barrister Tomi, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Right, I have Leone Thompson. Leone is a political science lecturer at Frobe College, one of the 3 constituent colleges of the University of Sierra Leone. Good evening, Leone, and welcome.
I am pleased.
It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Right, I have from the Sierra Leone Parliament, Honorable Indolo Givao. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, viewers.
Right, I have Adi Macaulay, lawyer who is a private legal practitioner and a public interest advocate. Adi, good morning. Good evening and welcome to AYV on Sunday.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
All right, let's start off. I'm going to start off with you, Lena, for obvious reasons. Looking at the democratic space and being someone who lectures around politics and the science of it, where would you put Sierra Leone currently, especially when we continue to advance the need for a return to proportional representation and the democratic space for dissenting views?
Sierra Leone, we all say that we are a democracy, but I must clarify it. We are a representative democracy, because a lot of people talk about democracy, and you could have a country like that doesn't have elections and so forth, and still be described as democracy. Now, with us, we are blessed that after the war that we instituted a representative democracy. But like any other states, any other democratic states, democracy is a process. It is something that we have to manage within our own context. And some of these challenges that we see here today in Sierra Leone, in terms of this struggle between divergent views, it is part of the democratic process. Having dissenting view is part of that process, because it is only when we speak our minds that we come to understand ourselves, and that is what representative democracy is all about. It is me having the right to say what I want, but also you respecting my right to say that. I might not agree with what you say, but I would respect you. So in that sense, I think for us, we are learning this thing that is called democracy. And sometimes we sometimes take it too far, because we have to remember the kind of political culture that we have come from. So it is a for me, it's a learning process, and the things that are happening now in Sierra Leone are the challenges that we have to go through in order for our democracy to be sustained. Because what we don't want is to go back to the dark old days of civil wars. And we have to remember, it's been 20 years before, at the end of the civil war, and there's a whole generation who doesn't know anything about that. So we don't want to go back to that state. So we have to be able to talk amongst ourselves. We have to be able to compromise and bargain amongst ourselves in order to ensure that this process that we are on, it is sustained and continued for my own children, my grandchildren, and so forth.
You know, having qualified the type of democracy we practice, going back to the proposal the Electoral Commission is pushing, and government is also pushing that return to proportional representation. Does that in any way augment opposition, the democracy to that which we all want it to be?
Well, you know, it depends on which side you are on the argument. For me, I don't. Electoral systems basically do not. You could have it say. Some people argue that PR system is more representative. Fine, I don't have any problems with that. But the system that we also have can also be representative if we are able to manage it properly. But what we see is this constant headbutting of views and so forth. Again, when you instituting a PR system, we have to inform the people. We all also have to ensure that it is within a certain time frame. Okay, if we're now going to institute a PR system, elections are in 11 months' time. So how do we go about that process? How do we get the people to understand what does PR mean, the whole technicality of PR and so forth? I think that those are the main issues, especially when you're dealing with ordinary people.
All right, let me bring in Barrister Tommy. I read your post on proportional representation and thinking that it's the best. I mean, if we're to talk about development and rewriting the narrative for development in Sierra Leone. So, but looking at it, many arguments have been advanced as to why. In fact, nobody's saying. I've not read any position that proportional representation should not. I mean, we should not return to it. But the timing is what many people are questioning, and there are a whole lot of frameworks people think we should have laid before going into that. But looking at the first past the post and comparing that to proportional representation and the timing, where would you put both?
Thank you very much. The first gripe I have with you is that I think when you are putting this panel together, you wanted a Mino on this panel. You brought this as a Honorable Guevara and Mr. Macaulay, my seniors at the bar. Ms. Thompson taught me, that because, and by the way, I have a 20-year affection for PR systems. My dissertation, my undergraduate dissertation was on the PR systems, and I argued 20 years ago, just so viewers understand that I didn't jump onto this last week. 20 years ago, I argued that the PR system is best for our context. And I'm going to piggyback on Ms. Thompson's point about our democracy being the representative democracy. In fact, that is my strongest argument for a proportional representation system. Because a proportional representation system ensures that every vote, everyone who turns up, who shows up at the ballot, at the polling station to vote, his or her vote gets counted. You have a situation, and there are so many situations, not just in Sierra Leone, but even in advanced democracies like the US, where you have the current parliament. Let me start from Sierra Leone. You have at least 23% of parliamentarians who didn't poll even 50% of the votes cast in their constituencies. So you have a situation where the person who gets elected in the first past the post, I don't even know whether it is properly timed as first past the post, because there's no post. You may even just get 35% of the votes and get elected, depending on the number of candidates and how the votes are spread. So you have a situation where you get 35% of the votes, but if you have 8 other candidates pulling 65% of voter votes, all the other votes get wasted. So even first, it is not representative, it's not fairly representative. Secondly, it even discourages participation, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, if you did a survey today to talk about people's perception about these two dominant parties, APC and SFP, you find at least 30%, and by the way, there's data to support that. IGR did a survey ahead of the 20th elections, and 29% of the persons surveyed said they would vote for a third party. Yeah, so you have at least 30% of Sierra Leoneans who would like to challenge the dominance of APC and SFP. But honestly, they will be saying to themselves, it's a waste of my vote if I vote for a third party, because ultimately it's going to be either APC or SFP. We can go back to 1996. The third party, actually, UNDP was even the third party. Some would argue UNDP won, but there was PDP. Fast forward 2002, you had UDP, PDP, all UNDP, PDP, all those parties. And then 2002, actually, you had even PLP. Remember?
The Peace and Liberation Party. Right?
Yes. And then 2007, we had what? PMDC. In 2012, it was straight fight between SFP and APC because everyone said there's no point. In 2018, NGC and C4C. Let's see even whether in 2023 they will win the same number of seats. You know why? Because the first past the post just doesn't encourage smaller parties or third parties to try. People don't want to be on the losing side. I would say Samuel is a great guy. I love him. But you know what? In the context of this job, it's going to be an NCTP or APC victory. And in the end, you have 10 candidates, right? One person pulls 25% of the votes, 75% of the votes get posted. So if we say we are a truly representative democracy, and I agree, it's a representative democracy because we elect members of parliament to make policies and laws for us. Not all of us make those policies. We elect a president who then appoints cabinet members who implement those policies and laws. It's got to be based on a fair representation. If you have a system that honestly, deliberately refuses to acknowledge and ensure that the votes of sometimes the majority of citizens don't get counted, ultimately, it's an unfair system.
And as you talk about unfair representation, the argument for, people who are against the PR system at this time is that it takes away the power from the people to directly elect their representatives. For them, democracy, the power belongs to the people. And so taking that away and giving that to the political parties is something that would definitely question that very representative democracy we talk about.
That honestly, it's a reflection of people's poor appreciation of how the PR system works or should work. There are several variants of it. So let's say in 1996 and 2002, we used the party list voting system. There's a closed and there's an open. What people are talking about is essentially the closed system where the party now decides to submit 15 names and you go and vote for the party without even knowing who the party has determined to be in the first position, all of that. There are several ways it could be done. As I've argued in that short piece that you talked about, listen, even in the current system, before I get to that point, even in the current system, the first past the post, there is no mechanism that ensures that in a country where our politics is ethno-regional, let's be honest, in the southeast, if you have an SFP symbol, good chance that you're going to get elected. In the northwest, for the most part, as APC symbol, you get elected. In 2018, for example, no disrespect intended, it was former President Nkrumah who single-handedly presented a list of MPs. All the MPs representing APC now were single-handedly handpicked by former President Nkrumah. SFPP, they kind of tried to introduce a system that looked democratic, but in the end it wasn't because they said 40% of the power resided in the constituency. But in the end, we saw members of parliament who are now in parliament who lost at the constituency level, but their political career was resurrected by the party leadership. So even with the first past the post, there can be no guarantee that at the end of the day, it is people who determine who will get elected. But I'll address that. I'll take one step further to say that even in a PR system, you could ensure that people know who they are voting for. So you can have an open list system. That's number one. Number two, as I've argued, you can even use the current constituencies. This is where political parties come in. And in any case, whether you go PR or first pass, internal democracy is really critical. Political parties, at least the leaders, have to understand that ultimately power resides in the people and the people must be brought along. You can divide the country into zones or districts into zones and ensure that there is some kind of input from the people in determining who gets on the list. So this is and to ensure that women are represented on minority groups. And when you talk about inclusion and representation of minority groups, we're not just talking about women, because you refer to the current Public Election Act.
Right.
They will talk about representation of women.
Yes.
But the PR system ensures participation of minority groups. Young people, persons living with disability, women, etc., etc. You could have a
Minority
system.
groups, women.
No, well, I meant to say, sorry, I didn't mean to say women are in the minority. Persons who have been traditionally discriminated against, you will say for women.
Marginalized, not discriminated.
Exactly. And so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say. I know we know there's a backlash from Motherhood 2 days ago at the Sarah debate. Please. And I didn't mean to say women are in the minority group. I was just, I misspoke. So the point I'm making is, with the PR system, they ensure that persons like that will be marginalized, traditionally discriminated against, they get involved. And there are different ways of doing that. So we can talk about the mechanisms of ensuring that, but we shouldn't throw the baby with the bathwater by saying, oh, no, we cannot.
But shouldn't the mechanics, would have been put forward to better understand what really we're looking at, instead of just leaving it in the air? Let us guess. What are we going to practice? What's the threshold and all of that? Is that not the crisis?
That is for the National Electoral Commission, and I'm sure for these guys, members of parliament, to do. But what I'm saying, my understanding of the way the system works in other places. And by the way, you have 94 countries of the world that are practicing PR system, one form or the other, a variant of the PR system. You have more countries shifting from the first past the post to the PR system. South Africa, South Africa, in European countries, in the US as we speak, there is a debate. In fact, there are reports. There's a movement for US to move towards proportional representation. And even if you look at their presidential election, the Electoral College is a form of proportional representation, whereby the states with the highest population get to contribute more votes to the election of the president. So PR system is a system that ensures fair representation, inclusivity, and even the whole question of gerrymandering. We can talk about the disadvantages there are. I don't suggest that it is perfect. No system is perfect, but I'm saying in our current context, to ensure that, we are not challenging census reports. We spent in excess of $20 million over the last 10, 15 years, and we still cannot accept any one of the reports or sets of data. And that's a tragedy.
Still with you. Let me bring in Adi. Looking at the push for proportional representation at this period, and you've listened to the submission of Tommy, is that the path we should take right now?
Let me veer away from your question and try to enforce two things. One is that when something is not broken, don't fix it. There's nothing wrong with our first past the post as it is. And secondly, it is the arrogance of power that has really gotten onto me. How could you seek to change the political landscape of a country, i.e. transforming the electoral system for members of parliament from first past the post system into proportional representation without seeking the views of the people? Like Ibrahim said, power resides with the people. I would wish for the leader of government business to come and tell us which steps he took to make sure that the voices of Sierra Leoneans were heard before that particular bill was presented to Parliament. We should start having respect for the electorate. Now, going into the argument proper, Ibrahim has made quite a lot of submissions here, but let me start by saying this. We have used academic arguments born out of the context from different countries to transplant it into the Sierra Leonean context, which is completely different. When we talk about proportional representation, we should not argue this in isolation. We should also tag along whether we are practicing a parliamentary system of government or we are practicing a presidential system of government. We are practicing the presidential system of government. And I can tell you that 70 to 80% of people of countries that Ibrahim has said are practicing proportional representation are parliamentary system of government they are practicing. And the reason why proportional representation is good for a parliamentary system, it creates the room for inclusive government, as opposed to the presidential system where proportional representation will not guarantee an inclusive government because of the separation of powers from the executive, the legislation, and the judiciary. Take, for example, when you look at the Sierra Leonean parliament, Ibrahim was bringing in the argument of ethno-regional representation. I mean, there isn't not a single, the present parliament as constituted does not have a single tribe that has more than 40 to 50% of members of parliament. Mr. Givao can agree with me. Not a single tribe. But when you look at the national executive, i.e. political appointment in MDAs, the imbalance is just huge. So if you're talking about national cohesion as a strength for proportional representation, that is a misplaced argument.
It has no bearing, is that what
it has no bearing. It has no bearing, as I've said. Correct me if I'm wrong, and Mr. Givao, Honorable Givao is here. When you go to parliament, you cannot tell me that the total number of members of parliament is made up of 40 or 50% of one ethnic group or people coming from one region. Not at all. It is evenly distributed. So the issue of national representation and cohesion does not have any place in the PR argument. It has a place in the presidential argument. So if you want a country where there is national cohesion and representation from all ethnic and regional groups in the governance of the state, we have to make sure that we have in our constitution what we call an ethnic audit, whereby you cannot have more than this percentage of a certain tribe in any one particular ministry or in the cabinet. That is the only way you can force.
So are you saying, in essence, the proportional representation system works better in Sierra Leone if we are practicing the parliamentary system of governance?
Exactly, that is my argument. And let me take you now to the current government in Israel. I mean, Israel is quite a polarized country where you have the Arabs, you have the Hasidic Jew, you have the Orthodox Jew, and you have the Jew that are not religious. And you want a government that is representative of all those groups. So what they are doing is practicing a form of proportional representation. You can see that probably in the past 50 years, not a single political party has been able to form a government in Israel because it has to piggyback on the support of other political parties. And when we talk about forming a government in a parliamentary system of government, it means that your ministers come from parliament. So if you want a party A to support you, you have to appoint some of their members of parliament as ministers of government. And also don't go too far. When David Cameron won the elections in the UK, he could not have an overall majority to form a government. He turned to the Liberal Democrat, Nick Clegg. They came together and they said, you know what? Let us have a representative government where we have ministers from the Liberal Democrats, we have ministers from the Conservative government. And by the way, in the UK, there has been a very strong argument for proportional representation, but that argument has not seen its way because the parliamentary system alone is a foolproof system to have a national cohesion government. And Ibrahim was saying that the political landscape is dominated by APC, SLPP. The only way you can have alternative voices is to be in PR. And I completely disagree with him. I mean...
What are your points?
My point is this. As at present, we have 3 members of parliament that do not belong to the SLPP or the APC. So that defeats that argument. It defeats it completely. And with the PR system, you are taking away the right of independent people who do not believe in the APC or the SLPP in having a say whether or not they can go into parliament. Because take, for example, if I look at I live in, constituency 130, and the candidates that have been brought up by the two political parties to contest for the elections are people that I don't have any trust in or hope in. I know they are completely useless. I will say, okay, you know what? I think I can do better. I don't want to belong to any of the political parties. I'm going to contest as an independent candidate. The PR system will not allow me that. It's completely. I've seen Ibrahim's argument that it makes room for independent candidates. No, it doesn't.
It does.
Okay, just allow me. It is not going to be based on a constituency. It's going to be based on a district. So
is it going to be the district block system?
So if I, just hold on, if I come in, I say I present myself as Haji Macaulay, and I have 60% of the total vote, and 60% should give me 6 seats, but I'm the only person. So you've wasted all the other 55 seats that are supposed to come in. So that has no say. It has no sway. For me, one, let's just give respect to the people. Let's go back to the people and ask them, is this what you want? People are not elected members of parliament or president to lord it over the people. No, you're there to represent us. And this thing of bringing in bills or laws that will change political landscape just under a year into election is completely frowned at. Even the ECOWAS protocol on elections clearly makes a very strong statement about changing electoral rules. I mean, it creates, and also the PR system creates rooms for corruption. So this is something we are fighting.
So let me ask a question. Proponents of the PR system are pushing that it reduces the billions we spend on every by-election, and those monies could be used for other developmental purposes. It also reduces political violence, the hate messages, and all of that. And in fact, that is one of the reasons even the electoral system is pushing for PR system, because they feel like for far too long our political landscape has been divided. The polarization is something we cannot even quantify between, is it along regional, along ethnic lines. So the PR system is said to address all of those ills.
Okay, when we talk about polarization, politics itself is adversarial. The moment you have different political parties, you've been divided amongst. We are talking about, respectful and decent division. Not divisions of hate, not divisions of greed we are talking about here. And let me just address the issue of cost you're talking about.
Yes.
I know a lot of people have bandied that argument. I mean, that argument again does not stand. Before coming here, I made a cursory research. And I said, they said with the PR system, it does away with by-elections. I said, well, the bill is only addressing members of parliament, but it is not addressing councillors. And I said, let me go into the electoral data. Since, as it stands, we have 132 MPs elected, and we have 446 councillors elected nationwide. Since 2028 to now, we've had 26.
It's 2018.
2018.
Yes.
We've had 26 by-elections for councillors. We've had 9 by-elections for councillors. So if you are talking about, trying to do away with the cost of by-elections, you might as well include the local council in the proportional representation. Because if you're going to say, we want to limit the cost on by-elections, but based on data, we have more by-elections in local councils than we have in members of parliament. By-elections. So, I mean, 6 of one is half a dozen of the other. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, that argument.
All right. Let me bring Honorable Givan from Parliament. Now, of course, we saw what's happened in Parliament, where members are just throwing punches and all of that at each other because of this particular bill. But what is the House saying? We know the House is not balanced because of this bill, and so what is this something, I mean, you people, some of you, especially you as a person, is pushing for at this time, the proportional representation? I've listened to some of the arguments you've advanced in the well, saying it's the best for this time.
Samuel, it's unfortunate that as Sierra Leoneans, we are discussing systems of election at this stage. It's really unfortunate. And that is because 80% of even the educated folks do not know their constitution. If you actually know the text of your constitution, we should not be arguing whether there should be proportional representation at this stage or whether there should be first past the post system at this stage. And one of my recommendations that I'll be putting forward is for, let's say, the civic education institution try to put together a compendium of all of our legislations that are being amended, all of our amendments of the Constitution. I mean, yesterday I was with some colleagues, lawyers. It will surprise you that they haven't seen this amendment.
202?
This 202 amendment. The amendment of the provision for a proportional representation or district block system is a constitutional provision. It is part of our constitution. Unless if we say, let us throw our constitution in the dustbin, that is when we'll say, let us start discussing whether that system of election should be implemented or it shouldn't be implemented. Section 38 of our constitution speaks clearly about the two systems of elections that should be embarked upon as far as general elections of members of parliament is concerned. Section 38.2 speaks about first past the post system. Section 38A speaks about district block system. And it laid down bare the circumstance under which the president can evoke the district block system. So, like I said on 98.1, it's not a new system. We are not introducing it. It had been introduced since 2001. And it was not introduced like some members on the opposition seats have been saying by Ahmed Tidiane. It was an amendment by the Parliament of Sierra Leone. They voted for it. 2/3 majority voted for it. Because Section 108 of the Constitution says for you to alter or to amend the Constitution, I mean, you must have 2/3 majority of all members of Parliament, not even members present and voting, all members of Parliament. So for this amendment, all members of Parliament, then of that Parliament, voted for it, and the Constitution was amended, thereby bringing in Section 38A, which makes provision for the district block system. So when we say introducing it at this point in time, no, we are not introducing it at this point in time. And what
are we safe to say we are reintroducing? We
are not even reintroducing. It's been there. What this bill seeks to do is merely laying down the procedure should we decide to go by it. I mean, to make their work easy, how does members of parliament be nominated? I mean, that is just what the bill seeks to do. And it did not merely state the proportional representation or district block system in it. It stated, one, the first past the post system. It says, if I can read it again for the edification of members of the public, it says, a general elections of members of parliament other than paramount chief members of parliament shall be by A, the one member constituency system under subsection 2 of section 38 of the Constitution, or B, the district block representation system in accordance with section 38A of the Constitution as set out in the 12th schedule. So they merely gave an example as to if we decide to go by the district block system, how should we go? What will be the formula that they should be using? What will be the nomination procedure? That is what this bill seeks to do. That is why in Parliament we are not seeking to amend the Constitution just so that we bring the district block system. If you follow our debate carefully, the only constitutional instrument that is before us for amendment is Section 32, subsection 2. Section 32.2 says there shall be the Chief Electoral Commissioner and 4 other commissioners. I mean, you recall that in the past census, the past government delimited constituencies, thereby creating a new region. And if you create a new region, common sense prevails that there has to be a commissioner covering that region. So if you just appoint a commissioner without amending the constitution, wherein it will say there shall be a chief electoral commissioner and 5 others, leaving it to 4 others, then you will not have a commissioner for that region. So that is why we are amending the constitution to make provision for the president to appoint somebody to govern the Northwest. But we are not amending the constitution because we are not introducing PR system.
It's
PR
already in the
system is part
constitution.
of our constitution. And as Sierra Leoneans, when we take our constitution and read it, then we are able to understand what is introduced, what is in it, or what is being brought afresh. Now,
so there are requirements for the PR system to be used, correct?
Yes, it's in the constitution.
So what are those circumstances?
If you read it, I'll read it for members of the public. It says,
the full one?
Yes, the full text.
Yes.
It says, where under any law for the time being in force, a date for general elections of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established in accordance with subsection 3 of section 38. For the purposes of such elections, the president may, after consultation with the Electoral Commission, direct that such election shall be conducted on the basis of the existing district in a manner to be known as the district block representation system instead of constituencies. I mean, it is very clear the circumstance in which the president may, in consultation with the commissioner, ask that we go by district block system.
At this point, is that applicable? I mean, do we not already have the constituencies?
The moment we conducted census, the constituency stands dissolved because there is now a new data. We now have a new data. And that data determines the population size of this country. So if we go by that data, we are going to delimit constituencies. If we go by that data. If we decide not to go by that data, then constituencies are not delimited. Then the room is created for this one to be triggered in. It's as simple as that. There is a new data that now tells you our population size. And like my brother over there was saying, in Sierra Leone, we have to be honest. I mean, some people believe that when you say politics, it means how much smart you are or how much you can outsmart the other person. It is this issue of trying to outsmart the other person that has brought us to where we are. In 2012, we had constituencies being delimited. I will tell you, in this current parliament, there are members of parliament that went to parliament with 2,000 votes. Whilst you have other members of parliament that went to parliament with 26,000 votes. I mean, where does the fair play come in? That is clear-cut gerrymandering. So oversubscribing members of parliament in one region as against the other. So if we decide to go by proportional representation, it calls for fair representation of every district as per the population of that particular district and takes away this issue of gerrymandering. That area, Samuel, once the president went to my constituency, he had to travel. At a point, he asked, is this still your constituency? And somebody said, yes. I mean, you have constituencies that are 3 times some constituencies in the north. I am being very honest. And we have to be very sincere with the people's money that is being used to pay us. Because if a geographical area is not enough to form a constituency, and yet you go sending somebody to represent that area, you are just cheating on the taxpayers whose money, whose hard-earned cash is used to pay that member of parliament. Some areas in Sierra Leone are seriously oversubscribed, whilst other areas are undersubscribed. So to solve that imbalance, I believe proportional representation can aptly solve it. Also, like the man who wrote his academic paper on this issue says, if you go to parliament, on the APC side, 99% of the people are Temnis. When you come on the SLPP side, 99% of us, we are Mendes. I mean, we have to have an inclusive government. Let us have a system where somebody comes from outside Sierra Leone and says, "Oh, you need not be a Timini man to become a member of parliament from the north." And it also gives us the opportunity for us to have the best of the best brains representing us in parliament. I mean, when you say somebody is a lawmaker, that person must be up to the task. It shouldn't be dependent on the weight of the person's or the depth of the person's pocket. I mean, proportional representation gives political parties the opportunity to actually look for the best of the best indigenes around the area or the demographic area where the seats for which the person will be representing exist. I am one person who actually believes that our parliament can offer more if we take our time to choose our parliamentarians. And that can only happen, honestly speaking, by us having the PR system. It is highly possible. Would have to yes, it is highly possible that with the PR system, I might not come out to be, one of the best for my region. There will be somebody better in lawmaking, in representation, and in oversight than I am. It takes away this burden from us of going to build toilets, going to build bridges, going to build schools. What you are going there for is to go represent the people as far as the three functions of a parliamentarian.
How does that burden taken away from members of parliament when, in essence, the members of parliament tell them, but definitely so it can only be taken because those who will be selected by the parties will not go to the people and tell them or campaign to them. Is that how the burden will be taken?
Now, once it is PR system, it creates room for political parties to be even much more careful. If you look at the bill, political parties are going to be presenting lists, and those lists are going to be endorsed by either the leader of a party, the chairman of a party, or the secretary general of the party. But these people that will be represented as it obtained in 2002 had to be chosen from that particular demographic area where the seat does exist. Like nobody will tell you that there was somebody taken from, let me say, the Gambia to come and represent somebody in the Kisidom. If you do that, definitely the people are not voting for the parliamentarian whose face, because on this occasion, the face of the parliamentarian is not going to be on the ballot paper. They are going to vote for the symbol of the party. But if they know that the person who will be responsible to them as far as lawmaking or taking information to them is not somebody that they actually know, definitely they are going to sway their vote towards another political party who might have chosen somebody within that particular area that they are comfortable with.
Okay, let me bring in Lena. I mean, it's quite interesting looking at all of having listened to all of the submissions. Then what would you say are the advantages of practicing proportional representation at this time? Because listening to Honorable Geval, it's again, I would want to ask this question perhaps before asking the question I asked earlier. Let me ask this question: the issue of parties' allegiance or loyalty as against the people's in the current first past the post system with is it 77(1)K that is enshrined in our constitution? How different does it? Is it from the PR system?
I think the argument for PR is already solidified here. Really. But for me, I can see the argument for PR. In some ways, I'm not averse to seeing some of the benefits of PR, but we also have to look at the other side of PR. PR, as Adi says, creates room for coalition governments. Majority of the time, coalition governments do not work. If you take the example of Israel, Israel has been going into elections because the reason that the smaller parties now hold the larger parties in ransom. And that's the problem, and it does not work. Either they support or they withdraw their support, and when they withdraw their support, they go back into elections. Therefore, PR it's fine to get more smaller parties and minorities involved. But at the same time, we have to look at effective governments as well. How effective are those governments that are held in ransom? Secondly, I do not necessarily agree with the idea that with the electoral system, our electoral landscape will change. Because what we have in Sierra Leone is a landscape that is embedded with violence, embedded in dangerous rhetorics, and so forth. How do how is does PR guarantee that we do not have that? Because I don't think there's any kind of guarantee. When there's an election, political parties are fighting election. Obviously, we're going to have that kind, because that is what, unfortunately, that is what we know in Sierra Leone. So for me, it's when you talk about representativeness, it's not about the electoral system. No electoral system is foolproof.
So the system cannot really solve the problem.
Exactly. First past the post system, you say, oh, we'll have more women, we'll have more minorities. There is nothing stopping political parties getting more representative. The problem in Sierra Leone is that our political parties have failed. They have failed to recruit new people into that. That's the essence of a political party. They have failed to recruit and attract more people into their fold, because we live in this place where it's the same old people. Some people have been here for the past 30 years. Some names I'm hearing today, I had them when I was 2 or 3 years of age. You know, so there is no room for growth. There is no room for progressive kind of politics. So in first past, we've all heard about the disadvantage of first past the post picture. It's very unproportionate, as they say. But at the same time, the onus is on political parties. For me, I really feel that political parties can bridge that gap, can get more women, can get more disabled groups and so forth. Because people are attracted to the message that they send, their ideology. Our political parties do not have ideology. They do not have a vision. They do not have, all we see is APC, SLPP, this, that, whatever. I oppose, you oppose. But at the same time, you have to grow. So I don't necessarily think that an electoral system will change the kind of politics that we practice. Secondly, when we talk about money, the cost
of by-elections.
Are you going to put the cost of by-election on that of the right of the people to have their say? Are you going to equate it? By-election, when an MP dies or he resigns, it is the right of the people to go back to the polls and elect who they want. The beauty of first past the post system is that I know who my MP is. I can have a relationship. Unfortunately, in Sierra Leone, because we are not doing it as it should be, we don't know our MPs. Okay, so when you take those examples, it is how we practice it. No, I don't think no electoral system will tell us that we should not fight. Because we all are scared now for 2023 that it's going to be violent. That is why all this argument about PR is coming from. Oh, it will be less toxic, it will be less this. How do we know? People are so they are so interested, or they get so much things out from this acrimony that we have. Also, when we talk about inclusiveness, again, I agree with Aggie. It has to do, and inclusiveness, social cohesion, it has to do also with the executive. There is nothing wrong in stretching your hand and say, this is what we want to do, and so forth. Because at the end of the day, we are all in Sierra Leone. We all have to have the same vision of where we want to see our country in the next 5 10.
Let me ask you this question, Lina. In terms of representation, Ibrahim Tommy submitted earlier that in 2018, for example, he is aware that the chairman and leader of the APC single-handedly, unpicked members of parliament, those who, and of course, he also brought that to the SLPP. It was seen as if democracy was prevailing, but at the end of the day, the leadership again had to make the decision in 2018. So how is that different?
It's not going to be
from
different.
The proportional representation?
That's what I'm saying. It's not going to be different, because then you're going to have a list system where it's the party executive that are going to sit behind closed doors, whether it's open or closed list, is the people they want that is going to go on the list. That man who might be number 4, 6 or 7 on the list, who might be the most popular one, in the constituency might not even get elected because you take first 5 or first 3 or whatever. That is the problem. So it does not matter for me. This argument to and fro, I can see the arguments for first past the post and PR system, but we have to look at our own system, put it in our own context, put it how ordinary people. We bring in PR system now. Ordinary people would not even understand. They don't even understand how to vote first past the post. And I'm not being any kind of whatever, but this is the fact.
Right.
You people have to be taught. You go, you cross the yanda. Exactly. Imagine PR system now. We bring in no education or limited education. It takes time. Okay. It is because each political party has to send in its list. We have 27. I can't.
About 17
exactly.
political parties.
You know, so these are all the technical problems that we're going to have. But the simple thing about first past the post system, it is simple. It is simple. It is easy. You go, you cross one name or one symbol, you go home. That's it. You whatever.
Just quickly before I bring in Tommy, in terms of quality representation. I know for certain the first past the post, for example, if I live in a particular constituency, say at the cell close, and that close business that I do makes me so popular, and a political party will just approach me, oh man, you're popular, so can't contest for you here. And that questions quality, but because of popularity, it gives me that opportunity to go and represent the people. Does the PR system guarantee quality representation?
It does not. Because, you know, what do we mean by quality anyway? You know, it does not. It means that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can actually go there, have a little word with the party executive, give them some money.
And get the spot.
Exactly. And your name is at top of the hill. And unfortunately, I don't know about people in Parliament. I don't want to insult anybody here. Or outside, and I don't want Sufulu at whatever. But at the end of the day, when we look at it, when as outsiders looking at the debates in Parliament, we don't see quality. What we see is people fighting, people whatever. How does that help our democracy? And somebody said to me, oh, well, it's not whatever. There are people also fighting in Uganda and whatever, and standing on tables in Uganda. That it does not matter. The kind of message that we have to send, our young kids are watching, that's not the kind of role model that we want to see. People go around saying they are honorables and honorables. Honorable people do not fight in Parliament. That's the thing. You know, so for me, it's irrelevant what you talk about electoral system or not. Our body politic is just toxic. And until we deal with our issues as Sierra Leoneans, ensure that we have a common vision, ensure that we have a patriotism, ensure that we don't put self before party. That's the problem.
All right. Tommy, let me ask this question about corruption, that the PR system fears corruption in its practice, in the sense that already we have in the bill pushing the dual citizenship trouble. That, I mean, if you hold a dual, you can be elected as a member of parliament. That's what it's also in the bill pushing. So, and the corruption, those who are against proportional representation are talking about is, I would just come from the US, I mean, have some dollars in my pockets, I'll just go to the leadership of one big political party, hey, I'm interested in that seat. How much can I pay for me to get that seat? And that, at the end of the day, does not really give the people the type of representation and what the people really need, because, I mean, that spot was bought. So how do we handle things like that?
So clearly, I think a lot of the concerns I've had about the PR system being democratic, to the extent that people do not participate in determining who gets on the list.
Yeah.
It's a party hierarchy that makes that decision. As I've said before, you can institute a process that allows the ordinary person to determine who gets on that list. we already have constituencies that we might rename as zones, as I argued. Let's say you have a district that will return 15 MPs. You divide the district into 15 zones and make sure that anyone who is interested, and by the way, we talk about violence and we're saying, oh, PR system may not reduce violence.
Yeah.
It does reduce it.
How?
It decentralizes violence. Because remember, with the constituency, you have to fight over this portion. With the district block PR system, it's the totality of votes
In the district.
cast for you and the party in that district, not just from one corner. So you have to go across the district to be sure that you are pulling votes. Because at the end of the day, it's about the number of votes you pull. So let's say there's a threshold. The way it works, there's a quota.
Yeah.
Let's say you have 100,000 voters in Western Urban. And so it depends on the formula. Let's say you have there are two ways to do it.
Yeah.
Then they say Freetown has what? 10 seats. And so the moment you get 10,000 votes, you are in, right? So you will need to now get votes. So if somebody you live in Central, someone votes for you at Wellington, it counts. Yeah.
But Tommy, if you live in Central and somebody votes for you at Wellington, do you know the problems of Wellington?
No. So this is the point. The point we're making is, and I will respond to that. When you have a district block, I like the name district block, you even have a possibility of all the members of parliament representing that district coalescing to work in the interest of the district rather than what we see in parliament. Honorable Geba has to travel to his small constituency perhaps every month, twice.
Spending 4 million.
There is a better chance of members of parliament working together in the interest of a district, a whole district, rather than one constituency. So on the issue of violence, you may have to fight in Wellington, fight in Central, fight everywhere. You may not even have the resources.
So the district level should just be one.
All over the district. But that's one.
Yeah.
So on the issue of how to get on the list,
Yes.
there is a clear way you could do that to make sure that the everyday person participates in that. But I mean, Samuel, let's step back a bit and understand where we are. So that doesn't appear like, again, this is not to make a case for those who are pushing for PR, but we didn't start this conversation today. In 2009, there was a forum. NCs organized a forum. It was called the Kingdom Declaration, where citizens, including civil society and political leaders, met and said the PR would be preferred. Post-2018 elections, the EU funded an international expert. He came here, spent some time here, and put out a report. One of the key recommendations by that EU-funded consultant post-2018 election, way before we started having this conversation, was that it's about time that Sierra Leone returned to the PR system. So there is a lot of literature on why Sierra Leone needs to return to the PR system. But I'll respond to a few comments that my learners
quickly then, yeah.
On when I talked about dominance, you talked about 3 independent candidates. Let's be honest. It's still APC SFP dominance. What's the percentage of 3 independent candidates? And for all the those independent candidates, we know the votes are on the side of SFP because these are persons who are denied SFP symbols and they run one.
And that's the point. With the PR system, if you are not placed on the list, you will not be able to have your...
I was going to respond to the other point. It is not true that in the PR system, you cannot run as an independent candidate. In fact, in the current system that ECSL is pushing, clearly there's a role for independent candidates. So this is how it works.
So the fear is, in 1996, we did not have that space.
We did not.
In 2002, we did not have that space.
Yes.
So what's the assurance that that space is going to be created now?
Listen, these things don't happen in vacuum. They happen because there is a law, there's a policy, there is a mechanism for that. All we are saying is this is how it works. There's a quota. As I've said, if Freetown has 500,000 voters, and they say 50,000 is a quota for one seat, you run as an independent candidate, you pull 50 1,000, you get in.
So,
You get less.
so if you
That
put
is
10,000,
Sorry?
if you put 10,000, you're
That is
entitled to
what-
5 seats.
No, you're not entitled to 5 seats.
Well, you've
only
wasted
pick up 5
6.
No, you have not wasted any
Oh, yes,
votes.
you have.
You have not wasted any votes. That vote is not going to be wasted. In fact, if you use the largest remainder formula, it ensures that even 1,000...
It's expensive. It is expensive system.
It is not, in fact, it is cost effective, I would argue. But let me move on. Clearly, there's a role for independent candidates. Now, on the issue of how ordinary people understand, it's 11 months to... Let's be honest, who were here, you are probably very young. In 1996, we didn't need
I voted.
we didn't need all the...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for public education, and I think
We're in the same class.
where we have missed it a bit, I hope there's still a lot of time for that education, is this should have been prefaced, and that's where I agree with Mr. Macaulay, this should have been prefaced with huge public education and a lot of consultations and all that. But we have been having these consultation discussions over time. This is why I pointed that out. But the point has to be made that in 1996 and 2002, people voted.
People voted.
It was a PR system.
Oh, yes.
And with respect, it
Oh,
was
yes.
a PR system.
They got it well.
People voted and we got members of parliament. In fact, I will tell you, and no disrespect intended for my...
We got the best of parliamentarians. The best of parliamentarians.
There's a lot that the current group of parliamentarians can learn from those two parliaments. In many respects, not only about the variety of the composition, the complexion of parliamentarians, but the quality of the debate. So here is how it works, really in an ideal world. You divide the whole district. You say the whole district has 10 representatives. People from different, as I've said, backgrounds, you go in there. So if you, I'm saying, Samuel, think of yourself. You are a celebrity in Freetown. You don't have to go with an LPC or SFP symbol in the district block system. Even, now this is the point, with the first past the post, you run the constituency here in Western Urban against APC and SFP, but for the most part APC.
Yeah.
Man, you will suffer.
And that is the reason for the
So
proportional
let's put it this way.
representation.
Let's put it
That's
this
the
way.
secret. You've let it out of the
Let's
bag.
put it this way. But now,
You want seats in
but
Freetown.
now, on your own merit,
If the system makes provision
in
for
a
that, why
PR
not?
system,
So you are
on your
rigging
own
the
merit,
system.
You
Why
only
not?
need to get all
It's
your
part of
friends
your
who are
constitution.
scattered
Yeah.
across the city,
Misinterpreted.
not in one small constituency,
Uh-huh.
to vote for you, and you meet the quota, and you are in. So I want to pick up on the point you just made. This is the context, and I agree with you. Why are we having this debate in the first place? He talked about structural some imbalance. Go back in 2015, there was a census conducted by the previous administration. It produced it.
Yeah.
Some data, which was used to do boundary
Delimitation, yes.
delimitation. The SLPP, then Operation Narrowing Party, challenged it. They questioned it, questioned the constituency, questioned everything. And then we got elections in 2018. See what happened? APC got just 20,000 more votes for all their members of parliament. Just 20,000 more votes over SLPP. Meanwhile, they had 20 more seats than SLPP.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an imbalance.
Yeah.
How do you explain the fact
Gerrymandering.
that they got just 1% more of total votes cast for members of parliament, but they got 20 more seats than SFP? That's the imbalance that I'm sure SFP, I mean, this as you say that they hate this by the case.
Right.
That's the imbalance that I think
What
SFP
is
has
the
been
imbalance?
trying to resolve. Hold on.
Yes,
by,
quickly.
among other things, doing the midterm census. In the hope that
Yes.
first, because they challenged the midterm census, in the hope that they will collect credible data. That process, as we all know, was fraught with many challenges, right? Clearly,
Yeah.
you understand. Now, I think there's actually a pushback against using that data. So they are now saying, okay, let's forget about census. We're not going to do boundary delimitation with that data. Let the voters.
Let's see if we can get more votes
Let
in the
us
West. in the
have
North.
systems that are based on voters.
Right.
So what you do is you register, and the next stage you have registered. And when they want to do it, I think there are safeguards against it in multiple registration by one person. NEC now says you have registered 100 voters in this district, and it's okay. The quota is 10,000 votes per whatever constituency or whatever MP. You do that. Man, as you say, it's not having it out.
All right.
So that is the idea. But that is what I'm sure, that's it. That's not the A-party case. APC, I don't speak for them, but I think APC thinks that the PR system doesn't favor them. SLP thinks because SLP obviously gets votes from all over the country.
It favors them.
Not that APC doesn't. And let me say this. I come from Bo. I was born and raised in Bo. In 2012, when Fasale ran and other APC candidates ran in Bo, they would have picked up at least 3 or more seats from Bo. I was raised at Shenge. You don't know what I'm talking about.
In the PI system.
Interestingly, I attended St. Francis Bo till I was in class 4.
So
and I was there since I was 6 months, so don't assume for me.
APC will win seats in Kelema.
Oh yes, they win seats in Kailam. They win seats in Kailam.
Okay, let me hear you. Okay.
So for me,
So at the end of the day, it is not even about the voter, it's about the party.
Exactly. So
Yes, go ahead.
So now, my colleague Ibrahim Tomia has really tried, but has not been able to convince me.
You'll be convinced.
And
your mind is made up.
and these are the reasons. He's still unable to answer to the problem that I identified in his assertion that an independent candidate can contest. So this is it. We are going to see if you have up to 30% of the vote, you can have 3 seats. So we have an independent candidate that has 60% of the votes. He cannot occupy 3 seats. What do you do with the 5 seats? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. That is one. And secondly, my late brother, and may Allah grant him Al-Jannah, Honorable Sharifu Kasim Keru, in the 2018 elections, he pulled the highest number of votes in the Western area. But assuming that we had a district block system, and he's not one that is really favored by the political party he comes from, he's placed right at the bottom of the list. Even though the AI comes from voted massively for the APC, but if it were the PR system and his name is placed at the bottom of the list,
He would not have been the first choice.
no, he would not have even gotten in because there is no way SLPP cannot have seats in Freetown. So you would have deprived someone that people voted for just because you are insisting on a PR system. Also, that is undemocratic. And the PR system takes away the control of the people over their members of parliament. When members of parliament know that when they come back for re-election, they would have to meet the people in primaries, they will think twice in trying to have some connection with them. You know, my good friend here has also tried, Honorable Giver, but he has given us half-truths. I wouldn't say he's lied. We have section 33 of the Constitution, 38 of the Constitution, which basically tells us that the country shall be divided into constituency, and each constituency shall return a member of parliament. NEC can, not less than every 5 years, not less than 5 years, not more than 10 years, redraw the boundaries of constituencies. And in 2002, it was a situation where we do not have constituencies because there was no census. Everyone agreed without controversy that let's have a proportional representation. And let me just get your bill there, your 2002 Act. It says here, that is the inserted section 38A, it says, where under any law for the time being in force, a date for general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established in accordance with subsection 3 of section 38 for the proposition of such election. The president may, after consultation with the electoral commissioner, direct that such shall be concluded on the basis of existing districts in a manner to be known as the district block system. So the key and operative words here are that a date for general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established.
And so let me take you on that just quickly. So he mentioned that already, based on the data from statistics, all of these constituencies have been dissolved.
Next Sierra Leone declared the date for presidential and parliamentary elections before the census data came out. So, as at the date of the announcement,
constituencies were in
place. So if he's talking about a PR system, it's for 2028. For me, this is a closed argument. The law, the constitution they are seeking to rely on says a date for the general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established. At the time when the date for announcement of general election was made, it was made before the census came out. That is one, the census result. The provisional census result came out. And secondly, there were constituencies existing at the time.
Have not been established. Have not been.
Don't we have constituencies?
Existing.
When something is existing, has it not been established? Establishment comes before existing. They've not been dissolved, have they? As at the date of the announcement of the date for general election, there were constituencies in existence.
Using which data?
Which constituency are you representing? Which constituency are you representing?
Using the 2012
No,
data.
which constituency are you?
003.
003.
Using the
Are you
2012
telling me 003 is not in existence?
Using the 2012 data.
It's not.
As at the time the census
It
result
is
was
not my
announced,
problem. That is the
yes.
problem of the
As
Electoral
the delimitation
Commission.
of that geographical area, as at the time the data was, this census data was established.
Look, I am a
It
lawyer.
says
I don't talk out of the law.
Well, that's what we're saying.
I know why I Jim problem. So I talk within the law. So the law is this.
That's what we say.
When a date for general elections for members of parliament is announced, if on the date that announcement is made, there is no established constituency, then you go for the PR system. But if there is an established constituency, you don't go for the PR system, you go for the constituency system. So now, and let me go further. Just allow me. Let me go further. Assuming that at the time assuming without considering that at the time when the announcement was made, there were provisional census results. It's still provisional. It's still provisional. It can be rejected, can't it? Provisional result can be accepted or rejected. So we still don't have established boundaries based on the provisional result.
because the data is not.
The data is not.
Yet.
So for now, we have constituencies. And let me just go to one other thing.
Yes.
Guevara, my landed Honorable Guevara has made a very alarming claim here. I don't even believe that within the SLPP, their members of parliament are 99% Mende. I've just gone off my head and I've listed the names of members of parliament in the APC. And because these are the people that I'm familiar with, even though I've known him for about 30 years, he's Kisi, not Mendy. So now, let me just give you this. I'm going to call you the names of members of parliament of the APC that are not Timnis. This is just to demolish the claim that all members, 99.9% of members of the parliament representing the APC in parliament are Timni. Let me start. Honorable Cherno Ramadan Ba is Fula. Honorable Alpha Ba is Fula. Honorable Manly Spain is Creole. Honorable Lahe Mara is Kuranko. Honorable Daniel Kuma is Kuranko. Honorable Tom Toka is Kono. Honorable Kadi Davis is Mendy from Pujao. Honorable Abu Mansai is Soso. Honorable Miata Amara is Mendy. Honorable Toure is Limba. Honorable Roland Kangbo is Limba. Honorable Ibrahim Conte is Limba. Honorable Ibi Kagbo is Limba. Honorable Scorpion is Limba. Honorable Samba Conte is Limba. Honorable Jawa Sisedi Bendugu by-election candidate is Kuranko. Honorable Wuro Jalo is Fula. Honorable Kaba is Madingo. So,
that's not true.
Let us not heighten regional or ethnic tensions by making statements that have no foundation in fact. That is the point. And
all right.
let me give you this.
Quickly.
This PR system they are pushing together with the bill. I can tell you, this PR system they are pushing together with the bill is is an instrument of electoral fraud.
How?
One is you are seeking to change quite a lot of the things within the electoral architecture without without thinking really clearly about it. For example, the requirement for a national identification number. You know, on the 25th of May, 2021, you know, people call me, how do you tweet? You tweet. So I made sure I went back to my tweet on the 25th of May, 2021. I tweeted that the long queues that I see seeking to register with the NCRA, I said, I am encouraged. I said, but the problem is there are logistical problems with malfunctioning of the NACRA registration machines and also electricity problem. I said, so they should give extended time. They did give extended time, but I can tell you, my staff at home queued for 2 days. She could not register. So do you want to disenfranchise her because of the incompetence of NCRA? That is alarming.
Okay.
It is alarming. And secondly, you have this bill proposing that where there is violence in any polling station, correct? The returning officer has the power to cancel. So now we see constituency 110. How you call it? Is it man? 3 times. It's not even handicap, it's man. 3 times. The APC candidate defeated the SLPP candidate. The second ballot, we saw a minister, we saw an identified worker at the immigration, smashing ballot boxes, kicking ballot papers. And these are known SLPP supporters. So if you are saying that if there is violence in any polling station, you are going to cancel, we are inviting violence. Because when I know that I am not strong there, I'm going to take violence there so that they can cancel the result there. And let me tell you something. This bill is an instrument of fraud. It will transform NEC, NACRA, and PPRC into factories of electoral fraud and voter suppression, and an axis of destruction to the electoral and democratic gains we've made since 1991.
All right.
So I am asking that let's go back to the people. Let's talk to the people.
Do you want that bill to be thrown out?
No. It is
At
not,
this point?
It is not everything in the bill that is bad. It is not everything in the bill. And let me tell you something. You know, as for Mr. Guevara, he's only identified one bit that has to do with the amendment of the Constitution. Even the NIN registration requirement is an amendment to the Constitution. There are several amendments there. So the Parliament, the Constitution has made provision that if you want to amend, you need 2/3 majority of members of Parliament.
Okay.
That is one. And secondly, I will just draw Mr. Guevara's attention
Quickly, yeah.
to section 108, subsection 9 of the Constitution. It says, references to the alteration of this Constitution or any chapter or section of this Constitution include references to the amendment, modification, or reenactment with or without amendment or modification. So even if this new bill is just going to take something out of the 1991 Constitution verbatim and put it there, it is a reenactment without modification or alteration. You still need 2/3 majority. You should bear that in mind.
Okay.
You know, they have no chance at all.
Honorable, let me...
And the last point is this, and I wish to take, and Dr. Abbas Bundu, God bless him, makes that point. He says that if you suspend, alter, or repeal the Constitution without the authority of Parliament, it shall be deemed to be an act of treason. And the authority of Parliament means you go according to the laid down procedures. And you know what? The good thing is there is no limitation in the prosecution of offenses.
All right.
You can commit an offense today. 10 years down the line, someone else will think, well, you were in parliament, you devoured our constitution, you committed treason, and they will charge you for treason and prosecute it.
Honorable Gefao.
So I hope that they have that in mind.
All right, Honorable Gefao, let me hear you. Well, I mean,
I have listened carefully to my brother and colleague. One thing that comes out clearly, and I will restate it again, is that as it is in Sierra Leone, the best thing that will happen to us is for us to go by our constitution in choosing one of the two systems of general election. For me, the proportional representation, for several reasons that I have advanced. One, APC, that he's representing here, believes in...
Don't worry, it will come very soon, but now I'm here now.
Yes, believes in unfairness, and it is that unfairness in our political landscape that the proportional representation, the district block system, seeks to cure. I mean, it's I would say bad. I don't want to use a strong word. It's really bad for you to try to outsmart people by having huge representation in parliament when you know deep down within you that you do not deserve it. And that can only be cured by a system like the proportional representation. And like he's saying, this current parliament is doing everything humanly possible to follow the text of the constitution stricto sensu. I mean, I always give thumbs up to the Speaker of Parliament, who is doing a very good job by holding the scale of justice in that parliament untilted. The last time we sat, I mean, the leader of the opposition raised an objection over the fact that he did not see the second publication of the Gazette. The Speaker ruled that unless that publication is available, we are not going to go ahead with the amendment of the Constitution. And I actually do agree with him. What I'll admonish my brother here to tell his members of Parliament is for them to be at the well of Parliament to debate this document and to ensure that they sit right through the process, particularly during the committee stay. That is where area where I respect Honorable Daniel Kuruma, one of the MPs on the side of APC, Honorable Daniel Kuruma, Honorable AKK, and a few others. When we are making bills, they make sure they sit through. That is one of our functions. I mean, this is a mere proposal. And this proposal is meant for us, members of Parliament, for us to go and sit through it. Like I said earlier, it is not this bill that is reintroducing, reiterating, or bringing back proportional representation. Proportional representation is part of our laws, and we are merely trying to make sure we use it as a system of election during this particular time, which we had used before. My lady sister there was saying it calls for huge education. We got it right in 96, we got it right in 2002, and it was really very easy. And like my brother said, when it comes to representation, you want your votes not to be wasted. So there's a particular constituency in Kailan. This is what happened. APC placed an independent candidate, and APC candidate who was an incumbent contested as independent, and APC gave a symbol to another candidate. When you take those two votes, they far exceed the vote of the winner for that particular seat. So let's say 80% of the votes in that particular constituency did not get their own choice to represent them. In proportional representation, you are going to actually cast your vote for the person who is going to represent you. Because we have been seeing situations where a political party, let's say in the Western area here, we get 45% of the votes in Western area, but yet we end up getting just one seat because of first past the poll system. You are not going to concentrate all of your voters in one particular polling station just so that you win a particular seat. But yet you are quite popular, you have representations or support right across the city. And those people that vote for you, because of their votes is not consolidated in one constituency, will not end up to be represented in Parliament. With this system, everybody will be represented, and this issue of outsmarting one person as against the other will stop. I am one person who believes, Mr. Macaulay, I read a lot. Shaka Stephen once said, on a fine day, APC will never win an election in Sierra Leone. A free, fair contested election. That is in his memoir, expressly written. I am going in for a system of government where SLPP will not try to outsmart APC, APC will not try to outsmart SLPP, and the landscape is quite level. Let us listen to the commission to say which type of system of election we will be going by for this particular time. And what this bill seeks to do is merely laying foundation, like I said, merely laying the procedure. Should we decide to go by the district block system, merely laying that foundation as to how the process should go through. And I already have an amendment or a provision in my head, which I'll be pushing through when we come to committee stage.
Please
for it to be part of this bill, just so that the democratic process is being followed strictly, just so that political parties actually hearken to their supporters, right from constituency, district, regional, and the like. The good thing in Sierra Leone is the structures of our political parties are uniform. Every political party has a regional executive, district executive, constituency executive, zonal executive. Before now, APC used to go by selection, quite undemocratic, but the new generation of politicians have pushed them heavily, and there is now a judgment in the court that they have to go by elections. And if they go by election, it will be very democratic in choosing their candidates that will be on the list, just as will be democratic in choosing the candidates that will be on the list for any other political parties. And this system of government will actually create room for smaller political parties to actually win seats, just as independent people who my colleague is afraid will not be represented, will be represented in winning seats. So for me, I say again, it's a fair system, and it is good that when an institution believes that their laws does not meet the trend of event, that they come to Parliament so that there are amendments to those acts. In 2012, this act was amended by the APC. SLPP did not boycott. The problem we are faced today in Sierra Leone is APC believing that boycott will actually give them the necessary answers.
And if they keep boycotting this particular bill, will the bill be enacted?
Oh, certainly so.
Oh, okay.
Let me just butt in.
Yes.
No, before it goes, let me just
30 seconds.
Yes. You can jail, IG Sobula can arrest all the APC member of parliament, and that bill will still not pass, because even if you take all the NGC, C4C, and 14 paramount chiefs and add them to the SLPP numbers, they will still not get 2/3
Well, that
majority.
is what my colleague is missing. There is no constitutional amendment in this bill.
So you think?
Let me tell you, we have gone through it. You have colleagues in Parliament. Honorable Chairman Majuba is a very seasoned lawyer. Alphaba is a lawyer. The only constitutional amendment in this bill is the one that has to do with the appointment of the commissioner. And who tells you when we get there if that constitutional instrument is not amended? Who tells you we will not just delete it?
Okay, all right.
So by boycotting,
gentlemen, let's bring in our viewers, gentlemen. Let's bring in our viewers. Peter Beckley is saying our brief experiments with both the proportional representation national list system in 1996 and the district list system in 2002 did not only facilitate the conduct of national elections during the most challenging times in our country's history, but it sought to and successfully unified this nation by including most of the diverse political units in the governance structure, which helped us to achieve peace, reconciliation, and relative stability at our most volatile era. Unfortunately, I have to say this before I continue reading. We have hundreds of messages. Time would never permit me to even take more than 10 of those messages. Please, guys, you would have to understand with us here. Amara Alpha is saying proportional representation electoral systems are used to elect candidates to parliament and local government councils. And PR is the term that describes, all right, just let me know your contribution. Interesting. This is one of the punishments I have to go through. The messages, which one should be read. Momo Vandi is saying, we often talk of democracy, but we fail to recognize that there are many forms of democracy adopted to the nation's need. For example, in the USA, the president is never elected by the general populace, but rather the electoral college. The electoral college system, we can say it is undemocratic in many ways. Gregory and Madam Clinton would have been president and not Bush or Trump. Why should people continue to compare the U.S. and Sierra Leone? This is sickening, to say the least. Can you compare the understanding of people in the U.S. and that of Sierra Leone? Guys, be honest to yourselves. Usman Dumbuya is saying that there is no need to debate about this so-called PR system while elections are around the corner. The people of Salone are not ready for that. Kaberu Jamal is saying, Ronald George Stone is saying, as I've said before, the PR system isn't a bad idea. However, the timing is somewhat suspect in that there could have been a consultation with electorates and the stakeholders in the advantages of the PR versus the current system, which will give the electorates enough time to digest its relevance. But as the elections are around the corner, it will look as a rush instead of having a proper consultation with all concerned. I'm going to take at most 3 more messages. Marcel Sema is saying, we will continue to remind you that the Public Elections Bill 2022 is a bad law. Anyone trying to make it sound good is trying to get you to support a law designed to help the previous regime rig the 2023 elections. Your MPs should reject the bill if they mean well for the country. Ronald Abubangra is saying, none of those, the PR and first past the post, will solve or strengthen our national cohesion. Sierra Leoneans vote wisely considering the current parliament wherein we have C4 CNGC who came less than a year and even independent candidates. The last message I'll take is from BK. BK saying APC and they are okay. I'm not going to go through that. The Public Elections Bill 2022, we must emphasize, is an anti-democratic effort to introduce a despotic legislation into our evolving democratic culture. It is not helpful to good governance. Lawrence Bangura. I have to again say sorry. But just quickly, Eddie Grant is saying the PR system encourages political parties to campaign beyond districts and provinces where they are or where the results are expected to be close. The incentive on the PR system is to maximize the overall votes regardless of where those votes might come from. Every vote, even from areas where a party is electorally weak, goes towards gaining another seat. The system restricts the growth of what's often termed regional freedom, with the PR systems rewarding minority parties with minority of the votes. The scenario is less likely to lead to situations where a single party should hold all the seats in a given province or district. All right, I have to hold the messages there. And just quickly, so as let me take few minutes to just quickly have your take on the issue of dissenting views and what opposition have described as seeming clampdown on that. If we take into consideration the recent Black Monday protest and the arrest of opposition leaders Femi Claudius Cole, Dr. Dennis Bright, and those women who were also arrested in the police term, they were not given clearance to go on and protest. Where does that leave our democracy?
Where does that leave our democracy? As I said before, in any democratic state, the idea of tolerance is paramount. There has to be dissenting views in order to ensure that our democracy is sustained. I know we have to go get permission or to notify the IG of police for us to protest. But the important thing, that's fine, okay? The important thing is that majority of the time, IG does not grant that right. So we have to question that. We have to question that because in any democratic dispensation, the right to protest is important. The right for people to air out their views is important. Their grievances is important. yes, in terms of law and order, the police is there to ensure that the protests are properly managed.
Mm-hmm.
They will tell you which routes to take. They will tell you how many. They might even tell you how many are allowed and so forth.
Mm.
But at least people have to be seen. And in trying to close down dissent, you create you create more resentment, which might not lead to better politics. Okay? Because when you create more resentment, when people eventually erupt, it will be worse. We've seen what's happening in Sri Lanka, okay, where people are now storming the presidential house. So we have to be in that situation where our democracy allows those who might feel aggrieved to be able to air out their grievances within the ambits of the law. And what it seems is not even this protest last Monday. It's previous to that, and even going back to the APC regime. Citizens were not being heard. And from where we are coming from a situation of civil war, people feel they need to be validated. Their views have to be validated. Political parties, the politicians have to be able to hear what the people are saying. This problem that we have now, we all accept it's global, but it hits us locally, okay? Some people don't understand, okay? But that means that it shows that you now, as a government, have to go out and explain in order for people to understand. But at the same time, you have to allow them that space to tell you that this is not a problem,
okay,
and so forth. Okay? And secondly, the idea that the women were, people were saying that they were being abused, they were being taken advantage. That is so condescending. It is so condescending to women. They know their problem. They understand what's going on with them. You cannot tell me how to feel. Okay? So we have to take, when we are dealing with the public, especially when you're dealing with women, you have to be able to deal them at that level where you are not being condescending to them and so forth. So I mean, in all of this, when we talk about dissent and so forth, we have to have that space. We go on about Sierra Leone being a democracy. Let us practice it.
All right, Tommy?
No, I mean, my views on this are out there. I'll be very direct. In a democracy, people have the right to freedom of assembly. We can discuss how you can make that enable it. The responsibility of the state is to enable it, provide security. You can negotiate, for example, if you want to occupy, say, Cotton Tree at 9, but people have to go to work and you may disrupt traffic, you may say, can you please do it at 2? Or can you please move to State Avenue? You have to enable it. I mean, let's don't even go around the issue. I have argued long ago that the Public Order Act, I think it's section 17 or 17 is going to be expunged completely. I mean, there is no place for that in the democracy. The right to freedom of assembly, to stage a protest, and you don't even have to explain why you want to protest. It's just free speech. For me, it's an extension of free speech. If it's done, for example, and that is not meant to disrespect anyone, wants to communicate, this or she is not going to be talking, perhaps have a placard. So that's how we have to understand it. And I've also given this analogy in the past. Back then, especially during the authoritarian regime, we had mostly one state broadcaster and perhaps 2 or 3 brave journalists who did newspapers. Government by then thought that, the whole place would be a ditch if they allowed multiplicity of newspapers and media institutions. See what we have today. See what we have today. We are on AYV, people across the world are watching us. You have, in fact, to make it better, social media.
Right.
Think of a number of times they mention the name of my name. We have nothing to do with it. Think of a number of tweets. They put out. So it's just unfounded fear on the part of the government when you keep stopping people from protesting. Allow them to protest. I tell you, listen, let me say this to you. when people start protesting, you call a protest and you start begging people to come and join you.
Exactly.
But when the 10 people show up,
Exactly.
we've seen that. You go to the West, you see 10 people stand there, they are protesting.
They're
Nobody
protesting.
cares about them.
Exactly.
It's just unfounded fear. So we've got to move. It's a mindset thing.
fact.
All right.
And the police got to change. But let me just quickly, please, respond to a few things.
In a minute.
I've been championing the bill to respond.
In a
Somebody
minute,
said,
go ahead.
oh, the PA bill is bad law. Again, with respect,
Not
there are
everything.
so many things.
Not
Like
everything.
you said, no, there are very good things there. It proposes a number of amendments. For example, even village elections. NEC has been conducting village elections.
Without
It
knowledge.
wasn't provided for. So there are so many things. Let's do, as I said, at the beginning of this conversation, truly back to that. But the other point I wanted to make about violence, and my learned senior talked about that. I don't think it is as simple as that. Once there's violence, you cancel the vote. It is saying that if it affects only
During counting.
yes,
During counting.
you could actually return the result. You understand? If it doesn't have.
It was during counting they
I think
obstructed.
the section it is a new section 86. If you don't mind, just so
Quickly,
because
yes,
I've had
please.
this before during other debates. Let's clear this up. It says a counting officer may, where violence occurs during counting of votes in a polling station, which significantly disrupts the counting process, cancel the votes in that polling station, and the Electoral Commission shall conduct another election if the outcome of the vote in the affected polling station will affect the outcome of the entire result. So they will conduct fresh elections.
Wow.
However, if it doesn't affect the outcome of the election, they will return the result. So let's just be clear about it that it's not as straightforward as that. And one thing that we haven't talked about enough is that the APR system reduces, perhaps even eliminates gerrymandering. And our problem today, the reason we keep questioning censors, really from where I sit, and we say, oh, census is about development. It's about development. Unfortunately, the census, the last two census exercises have been more about accommodating parliament, about political party making
Creating more
parties.
constituencies. Yeah.
Let us eliminate that so that when there's census, I will come forward to be counted, because at the end of the day, we want to be sure that if you have the correct data of Sierra Leoneans, you will plan for them. What this does with the PR system is not even about whether you have a census data that says one thing. It's about what? Whether you have registered as a voter.
Right.
And in the end, we have safeguards. So this is where I disagree with people who are questioning the use of the NIN. What I think I'll push for is, in addition to the NIN requirement, make sure that NCRA is at every registration center.
Yeah.
It will not work because the next system would
I'll
have
give
been
you a time
updated
shortly.
with the NACRA
Just
number
like-
before
just
you do
like
that.
quickly.
No. I think what will happen is this: you have NCRA staff and the NEC people. Now, where you say that you don't have an NIN number,
You're registered.
the NCRA people register you, and this
I
is
tweeted about it long ago.
no. This is what I'm proposing. It cannot be right. I mean, why is that
Okay.
important?
You are stating my
Let's
tweet.
discuss this. Why is it important? We know, I mean, he knows as much as I do, or perhaps even more, that in developed democracies, and we are aspiring. And somebody was saying, why do we compare ourselves to the US?
Because we
Oh, you have to
aspire.
aspire.
Okay.
You have to try to get to where they are. It is a safeguard against, for example, multiple double registration. Your national identity number or identification number is what government uses for a number of services.
All right.
You need it. But if you can show up at a polling station at a registration center to register, but you can't show up at NECRA's desk for you to have an NIN, then I question what our political parties are
Okay.
doing to inspire some sort of confidence in their
You can
members.
come in. I mean, just quickly on the dissenting views.
Okay, so basically, people might think this is controversial, but it's not. And other people may think it is a stupid legal advice. I will say this to anyone, and I will provide you free legal representation. You don't need permission to protest. You don't need to notify the IG to protest. Read my lips. I am a strict interpretationist, and I will read section 17 of the Public Order Act. It says any person who intends to take part or takes part in organizing or holding any procession shall first notify the Commissioner of Police. The key word there is any procession. Now, I have checked the meaning of procession. It means that a number of people or vehicles moving forward in an orderly fashion, especially as part of a ceremony, a funeral procession. So if a group of women wearing black on Tuesday go and stand in front of the office of the IG with placards saying that this IG Sovula is transforming the SLP into a regime protection force, they've not committed any offense because they are gathered there and the Constitution makes provision for freedom of assembly. And there is nothing in the Public Order Act that prohibits protest. It says procession. Procession. I will challenge anyone on that. And I will emphasize that is not a stupid legal advice.
Okay.
That definition is in the law.
Okay.
The procession.
Procession.
It's not defined in the law.
It's moving from one place to another. It's simple.
Other than
So that I don't start messing people. And they say something like this.
My take on
yes, dissenting views
is I will advise members of the public to actually seek to express their views within the ambit of the law. You see, us lawyers, we have very comfortable homes. When we urge you out there and you are arrested, we go to the police. All we do when you are being taken back to your cells, we go back to our houses. You understand?
My interpretation.
So all I will ask,
It's not possession,
I
it's
mean,
protest.
it is good for your voice to be heard, your voices to be heard. And I will always ask the Inspector General of Police to actually look at their concerns and see how best he can provide security for them so that their voices are being heard. I mean, I am following the Sri Lankan issue. If somebody bottles in grievances so much, the outburst of it normally is not good for a nation. Let us see how best we can be vetting their concerns and allowing them the space for them to assemble. But if the law says no, you cannot, please obey the law. Don't hack into our advices too much. And I always push that let us look at a system of governance that will be free and fair for all. Okay. Let us stop outsmarting others, particularly seeking for censors simply because we want to do gerrymandering, whereby one particular region is oversubscribed as against the other region. It's not fair to taxpayers whose money is being used to pay those members of parliament who in the first place ought not have been there because the area they represent is not up to an area that can form a constituency.
All right.
The welfare bill then.
It will stop.
Stop it. You're talking about
Let's leave that for another day.
Let's talking about taxpayers' money.
Well, I'm really ready. You see, Samuel, I am so ready to discuss the welfare bill. And as Sierra Leoneans, we must discuss wage.
He's in support.
We must discuss wage differentials.
Right.
We must.
We will discuss that.
You will have one person in one institution and in 50 million loans. Some other person with the same qualification in another institution, even doing much more.
We will discuss that. I mean, I have many members of parliament on record. Thank you very much. All right, it's been a pleasure having all three of you. I mean, gentlemen and the lady. It's always a pleasure having all of you here. In case you missed part or whole of this conversation, a repeat of it comes up on Thursday, 10 p.m. So you can follow the entire show. But again, next week, same time, same station, a fresh edition of AYV on Sunday comes up here on your home of all things credible, factual, and all times balanced. Many thanks to Lawyer Ibrahim Tommy, Executive Director for Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, Leone Thompson, a political science lecturer at the University of Sierra Leone, Adi Macaulay, a private legal practitioner, and good governance advocate, and of course, Honorable Indolo Gevao. Many thanks to all of you and to all of you, our viewers and listeners, including those of you who followed us on Facebook. The show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Wise Bangua. And up next is the Housemate Salon Prime. So let me take you right to that all. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.